Hi, welcome to tonight's session. I am recording this session ahead of time so that we will use tonight's session to go over individual concerns in regards to the capstone writing project. There are a couple of things that I'd like to review with you in regards to the project, and some people have expressed concerns, and I want to go ahead and share some things with you this evening. In sharing the screen, I'd like to show you where you can find all of your capstone resources that will assist you with how to write the capstone project and put it in its correct format. So once we click on the capstone, you see here is the exploratory writing project writing template. And I want to make sure that we open that and take a look at that as well today. The next thing is we have the capstone rubric here. We also have the annotated bibliography template, which you turned in that assignment this week. All of you did very well. And many of you guys are not clicking on all of the links within the assignment. So an example of that is that this week we should have the annotated bibliography, which was due, and you have a specific example that has been given to you of how to create, and it is highlighted in the annotated bibliography section. So you have another 8 that are due next week. And so if your format was not correct and points were deducted, I want you to go back to that area and make sure that you are doing that section, that you are using the correct format from that section, okay? So I want to show you again by sharing my screen. Here we have the actual paper. And we have right here in this area is how to create the annotated bibliography. And if you click on that, that is a Google Doc that will show you exactly how to do that. Now I'm going to share that exact Google Doc for you. And this is how to create the annotated bibliography. If you remember here, if you read this entire page, it gave us 2 types of annotated bibliography, a summary and an evaluative annotation. And we are doing the evaluative annotation for this particular assignment and for the next assignment when you do the next 8. The difference between the two is evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of each source, which is number 6, and identifying the observations and conclusions of the author. As we went down, it gave a sample, and here we had the summary where it just talked about the focus. And the summary of the specific article. And in this section, it actually, in the underline area, it highlighted the focus and the strengths and weaknesses of the article and how the article could be utilized for your specific project. So that's the important part. So if you didn't include a couple of sentences or more, maybe anywhere from 2 to 4 sentences in regards to the strengths and weaknesses of the article, as well as how the article can assist you with your project, that is something that you will need to include and be more detailed with Many of you, I looked at everyone's annotated bibliography and have graded most everyone's. There are a few that just kind of gave one sentence. This article will help me because of this. This article will help me because of that. I would like you to give a little bit more information on the strengths and weaknesses of the article, and how a couple of more, 2 more sentences about how this article will help you. The reason why we want you to evaluate the article, maybe the article will not help you. And so if it's not going to help you with your research question, that may be a reason why you would not utilize the article, and maybe you need to go back and find a different article. So we're working on the evaluative annotated bibliography, and your format should be just as it is written here, okay? And the underlined section is just the difference between the summary annotated bibliography and the evaluative annotated bibliography. So those are the 2 differences there. I hope that answers all your questions. This is going to be so helpful for you in the very end when you're turning in your final project, because as you are doing your references, you will have all of this completed to do your references, and it'll be a copy and paste. So this will be very important. And then as you are evaluating the article, it's helping you to reflect and to be able to do your journal writing, which will be crucial and in your methodology for chapter 3. And I'll be talking about that a little later. So again, we want to go back to Blackboard, and I'm going to show you that again. So we are here back at Blackboard, and I'm actually on week 4, which has already occurred. And so we are into week 5, where we are working on the next 8 required journals. Now you can have more than 16, but there must be a minimum of 16. So as you are reflecting on the annotated bibliography that you turned in for week 4, take a look and ensure that you have the detailedness from the paper and from the example that I have. 2 sentences minimum, a couple of more. It's helping you to reflect to see if the journal is really what you need for your research project. It's going to be crucial as we begin writing the literary review, and the literary review will be important in our methodology and in the chapter 4, which we'll be writing in 605. So the 2 areas that we're writing in 605, chapter 2 and chapter 4, and these 2 things are crucial for that. So it's easier for us to ensure that we have all of that information together and ready, so that it's just the writing process for chapter 2 for the literary review. All right. So we were talking about where are the resources. That's where we were. And we're going to go into the literature review matrix a little bit later. Again, I want to highlight this is the capstone project writing template, and I'm going to go ahead and share that now. The writing project is in Microsoft Word. This is important for it to be in Microsoft Word because that is the part that allows it to be uploaded correctly in Blackboard. So this is super important when you're uploading and for formatting. Blackboard does take the project out of formatting sequence, but you don't need to worry about that. That is an error on Blackboard, and professors will download it, make sure it's formatted correctly according to the guidelines that we have for you here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again and show you the format. So here we are with the format. It should be in this. Many of you already, when turning in chapter 1, submitted it in this format, which is what I suggested week 1. There were 2 things that we accomplished in week 1. The first thing was having the librarian there the very first week, so you know how to find a journal, how to utilize the library. So you could begin collecting the journals and reading over them to see which ones and how to create the problem, all right? And what resources you would need as references to previous authors who have attempted to address a similar problem, all right? So that was one of our first goals. We did that. Week 1, the librarian came in, showed you how to narrow down your search. You also begin doing journal writing. Remember I said that the journal writing would not be turned in during this course, that it would be turned in during the final project when you submitted the final project in 605. I specifically said you'd have to have 16 weeks, 8 weeks from the start, which is 580, EDSC 580, the course that we are in right now. And then you would have 8 weeks from 605. That is 1 journal entry per week, and going over your reflection of the project in each step-by-step process, beginning with how you searched for the journals. The discussion boards is also connected to the reflection of your journal writing. So as you wrote these, and wrote your discussion boards, they apply on a weekly basis. They apply directly to your journal writing. So you should have those saved so you're not recreating. And maybe you had some more aha moments about your problem and your reflection of the problem during this whole entire process. So what many students have already done, and I suggest that if you didn't do it when you turned in chapter 1, that you definitely do this when you turn in chapter 3. You're going to use this format and you're going to plug in all of the information. Now, none of this was required on the title page during the chapter 1 section. So it wasn't necessary for you to fill in this area. But by having it in the format and just kind of uploading this, it will save you time. This acknowledgement would be a separate page, and that's why it's blocked off that way. And it's optional, as it is stated here, that you can thank your support group or anyone else, any other type of acknowledgement that you may have, or you can leave that page out. The abstract is written at the end of the study, which is stated here. It has the amount of words that's required, 150 to 250 words, including the proposal and research problem of the study. The design of your study, was it qualitative, which we're going to be talking about in a moment, that it's qualitative and we're using qualitative, and the results of your study and findings, and a summary of your conclusion. And then they have keywords. This is super important. So just keywords. You're not defining the words here. You've already done that in chapter 1, but the keywords go in that area. Your table of contents, if you're using all of the, when you get to the literature the review of the relevant literature, you're going to add the sub-level headings, okay? The level subheadings here. And that's the different areas that you discussed and that you reviewed by reading various other authors and their thought process on key terms. And the key terms might be, let's take a look at bullying. If we said we were going to do bullying, then some key terms might be bullying in middle school, bullying in high school, and just how it, spans over time. So we might say bullying across the K-12 setting, and maybe there's some facts about that. What does the literature say about how often bullying occurs in K-5 versus K-6-8, which is the middle school, and then versus high school. So we would kind of read about all these different various authors that talked about how often, the frequency, what are the common areas that bullying occurs, and that kind of thing. Another area might be common areas where bullying takes place. And so that would be a subheading, common areas. So maybe we're talking about, what are the most common areas, K-5, K-6-8, 9-12. And that would be another subheading. So we would look at all the different authors that discovered these and had, they agreed or disagreed. Either or would be in that subheading, okay? And then we're going to talk about the methods, which we'll be writing in chapter 3, which is the setting, the role of the researcher, the plan for reflective exploration. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we have the reflective findings and discussions. We'll talk about that in 605. We won't be getting to that in this course. And then the appendices, and we'll talk about that again in 605. So what you have written at this time is you have written chapter 1, and you have turned in chapter 1, and I wrote comments on it. So please download your paper, make sure you open it. I made comments on the paper, as well as I put comments at the bottom, where the rubric, with the points for the rubric. So you want to look at if there's any minor changes that you might need to make, okay? So you had your purpose of the study. Again, taking a look at the bold area. It should be bolded on your paper as well. So the purpose of the study, then indentation, and then all of that information. The next bold area should be the research questions. Primary research question, secondary research question. Many of you followed this format to a T. Again, many of you turned in this paper, your chapter 1, in this format, and that saves you time. So if you didn't do it for chapter 1, you might want to start plugging in chapter 1 into this format so that you have it ready to go. The next bold and subheading, subjective statement. Some people did not include the subjective statement. So you want to go back and talk about that. I'm saying it's a subjectivity statement, all right? And then a couple of people left off the definition of terms. This is important. The definition of terms refers to, can anybody pick up this paper and understand the definition of terms, the terms that we use in education? So sometimes we have SST, Student Study Success Team, and then I'm going to define it, because many times we just say SST, Student Study Success Team. What does that mean? How are we using that? What is that for? Because if we just write SST, the average human being would not know what an SST is. That is why it becomes a part of the definition of terms. If I was writing about the SST process and a problem with it, like how it's not being utilized properly, and that was my research question, changes that need to take place within the SST process. And then, so I'm using the initials SST frequently. So we need to know what it means, and then we also need to know how it applies in education. Okay, so, and then that concluded. A couple people put a conclusion there. No, there is no conclusion in the chapter 1. Not that you erase it, don't erase it. Your writing is good. So the conclusion comes at the end, so save it for later, but it doesn't belong in that area. Again, we're going to be talking about the review of relevant literature. I've given a couple of examples already. And in the review, you're going to have subheadings, like categorizing. How does this all together? This is my research problem. Is bullying being addressed in schools, you know? And why is it being ignored? Then I'm going to have some subheadings on bullying, you know? What is bullying? A definition of the term. Is it well known? What are some problems with how bullying is recorded? You know, problems, that might be another thing. Common areas, as I discussed before, those would all be subheadings of different journals and different authors that have addressed what are the common areas. Are they always unstructured or structured areas? Or, you know, is it more prevalent in certain areas, communities, whatever? That would become my subheading. So that's really important. I'm going to go into chapter 3 a little bit later. Chapter 4 is the conclusions, recommendations for further practice, and then we have our reference page. The appendices right now is our journal. So you should be plugging these things in right now, starting with week 1, and we're going all the way to week 16. Okay, so this is really important. All right, so also right here, there is a Google Doc on how to assist you with the reflective writing, the journal writing. So, and here is a template for it. And this just helps you to move along with the process and working it. So you want to download this and make a copy of it in this Google Doc so that you can just have it and plug in your information in the various areas. Again, you're going to go to week 16 with it. 1 journal entry per week. All right? Okay, so now I would like to start talking about chapter 3 and how we are going to, so again, I want to go back to, let me share my screen one more time, so you are familiar with how we are finding all of the materials. You're finding all of the materials here in this area under capstone research. And you have, there's many things. Editing 101, ways to get feedback. In 605, we're going to be doing peer editing. One of the assignments will be that we'll be in groups. I will assign you in groups. Each person will get someone else's paper. If it's just 2 people in a group, we'll exchange, but we happen to have 9 people, so one group will have 3 people in it. Everybody will get a paper, and I will grade you on how you graded your peer on this assignment, because feedback is super important. So if it's not clear, if you don't understand what they're doing, if you don't understand as you read it, it's not clear, it doesn't seem like it's moving in a specific direction, then I'm going to grade you on how you graded your peer. This is super important. I want you to wrap your minds around it. We want to be honest with our peers. So like if they're making a lot of grammatical errors, if their commas aren't in the right place, their punctuation isn't in the right place, that would be a comment. You want to say, you know, kind of seek the Writing Center for more support with your grammar and punctuation. You want to have that as feedback, you know, so that they know, okay, I need to submit this paper in ample time to get feedback from the Writing Center, all right? Plagiarizing, does it sound like it's being just written directly? Quoting, another thing we've talked about what synthesis is. I sent you a video last week on synthesizing and the importance of synthesizing. It's comparing and contrasting. It's not just saying, this author said this, quotations. This author said that, quotations. No, we are using quotations only if, when we paraphrase, it takes away the meaning. If we are not, if it doesn't take away the meaning, then we are paraphrasing it, putting it in our own words. As the video stated, putting it in your own words does not mean just changing the sentence around. It's literally taking all that information and putting it in your own words, and then comparing and contrasting and saying that the author stated this. You are citing them. Sometimes you'll need to state it directly, like when you are citing people in the literature review, none of that is your work. So it's important that you said, these authors said this and they came up with this conclusion and this is what they thought, and you cite them because it's all their ideas and their studies. You paraphrased it, but you're going to give them credit for their work, okay? So, you know, there's editing 101, hanging indents for referencing pages. There's page breaks, line spacing, split screens, title pages, approval citations, all of these things are right here. These are all the resources. So if you didn't scroll down, this is where you scroll down to get more help on how to do this. Watch this video on how to help yourself. For those of you with Mac computers, here it is, creating a photo of your signature with a Mac. There's a lot of how-to videos here that will help you as you begin to format your paper and input the different appendices and different things. And sometimes that's where the frustration comes. You're at the end, you spent all this time, and it's not formatting correctly. Again, we are right here in the capstone research area, and there are many, many, many tools here to assist you, okay? We also talked about that the handbook was available. Here's the Capstone Experience Handbook. The handbook kind of basically went over the different things about the project, what we should do, how we began writing it, what's expected of us, when things are due. Of course, you have the Blackboard to help assist you as I input the dates on the Blackboard. But this is another reference for you in writing this capstone research. It tells you the schedule of tasks. You know, you've already turned in chapter 1. We're going to do chapter 2 in 605, and we're doing chapter 3 in this section. So it kind of gives you all of the things, the ethical research. I'll be talking about that in a few minutes, and that you do have a final paper and an oral presentation. The presentation will just go over your process and your research problem. You will have to do a presentation, maybe 5 slides. We won't have time for detailed information about it. You're going to go over your process, what you discovered, a couple of pictures, maybe 5 slides, and everybody talks about their process. So that's something that's going to happen in the 605. Again, this one talks about the project length, the pages that you should have, chapter 1, 3 to 5, chapter 2, 4 to 6, chapter 3, 4 to 6. So we'll be talking about chapter 3 in this video as well, and this is how we would be doing it. It needed to be an APA 7th edition throughout the capstone project. So I sent you a video on the 7th edition by Dr. Doyle. Dr. Doyle went over the difference between the 6th edition and the 7th edition, and she highlighted it in detail, the different areas. One of them that will be super, super important to you is when you are citing people in the authors that are multiple authors of a particular article, you don't have to list all the authors anymore. It used to be that the first time you had to list everyone, and the second time you could abbreviate ETAL. But now, even with the very first citation, you only have to do one author and then ETAL. So that will save you a lot of time, okay? It does have the title page. It has the indentations, what should be there, the approvals. It has all of that, and the size, okay? And then it has the rubric that you can click on. So here is more APA style from OWL, and then research design organizer. All of those things are extra resources for you during this time, okay? So again, I want to go back to here, and this is where we are. We're talking about the reflective practice. This is a reflective. And then we also have how to writing the literature review. So we'll talk a lot about that in 605. And then the APA 7th edition format, all right? So now what I'd like to do is discuss with you chapter 3, all right? So, all right, so chapter 3. We're gonna be writing chapter 3. So a couple of things, the components of chapter 3, the participants, keeping the names anonymous, all right? So you're gonna say, this school district with 680 people, grades 6 through 8, and you may describe the district area, the population of the district using the statistics that you find on the district webpage. But you're not going to name the district. You're not going to name the school, and you're not going to name, you're just going to say students in grades 6 through 8, all male students, all female students, just, you know, whatever. Then you're going to have the procedure. The procedure is a step-by-step section, and I will go in more detail about that. The strategies of inquiry, the data collection. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the data collection. Not a requirement for this particular assignment. So in the past, when we did this, it was a research and where we did an actual intervention. And so we did it in a group process. We're no longer following that. That required the IRB approval. So we are just going to use, you can use a survey or group responses to a question, like polling the students to serve as an interview. So after you did something, how did that make you feel? How did you, and then this student A said this, student B said that. 12 students were polled, 6 females, 6 males. The 6 females stated this, had this in common. The 7 males had that in common. You know, that is what you would do as far as that. Now, a survey, you can create a survey if you like, but it is not a requirement. No one is asking you to create a survey, pass out a survey of some sort to a group of students. The reason being, and the reason for the change in the process of this project is because many people don't have access to a class. And not being able to have access to a class limits them from being able to pass out a survey or give a survey to people and collect the responses. So if you'd like to do it because you think that it would further assist you with your research, feel free, but it is not a requirement. Instruments, they're not required because we're not going to be using different types of instruments in this. And data analysis, okay, so as we analyze the data, only the literature review and journal are required to be used for the data analysis. That's the requirement. So if you put a survey in or you use some other national statistic or data or research, that's fine. But it is not a requirement for this particular assignment, for this particular project, the whole project. Okay, so chapter 3 should be, it should be future or past tense, okay? So when you haven't done the project, you usually put it in the future tense. And then when you finish everything, you put it in the past tense. Well, we would like you as instructors to keep it in the past tense. Just so when you turn in your chapter 3 to me, you have not finished everything, but you will act as if you have. Put things in the past tense. It helps you from having to go back and change it to the past tense when you are turning in the final project, okay? So again, past tense, when you turn in chapter 3 to me in ED SC 580. Okay, so who are the participants? The participants are the targeted population and sample that you will use for generalizing about the targeted population. The demographics, information such as age, gender, ethnicity of your sample, and procedures for selecting the sample should be outlined, including justification for the sampling methods, also known as the sampling procedure. Okay, so that's again the vagueness, you know, if you're going to use the ethnicity, 50% this, 75% that, you know, and again, we're not naming the district, we're not naming the school, we are keeping that anonymous. All right, the procedures. This section is based directly on the research questions. Specifically, this is the how-to section of the study, and it will introduce the design of the research and how the data will be collected based on the questions of interest. The material should be presented in a step-by-step fashion, and so that another researcher can be able to replicate the study by reading the procedure section without needing to ask as many questions, all right? Any questions, okay? We are doing qualitative procedural components. We are not doing quantitative. And so we're doing the strategies of inquiry, the data collection, the data recording, and the instruments, all right? So the strategies of inquiry identify specific strategies of inquiry to be used during the qualitative research traditionals like the biography, the oral life history, understanding the person in their context, the ethnograph, the primary qualitative research technique needed to use to understand who others are, who are different from us as a collective level. The ethnic group, for example, how far research on why are some people different from other people, getting to the bottom of the differences. Grounded in theory, understanding the causation of belief or behaviors. The case study, in-depth understanding of a single case. It could be an individual. And the phenomenological understanding the unique aspects of human phenomena. Some strategies of inquiry, providing some background information about the strategy, application of and a brief definition of the discipline of origin, discussing the intended outcome for this type of strategy, discussing the source of the strategy, discussing why it is an appropriate strategy, and identifying how to use the strategy and shape the type of questions asked to form in the form of data collection and the steps and the data analysis for the final narrative. The data collection procedures, this section should include the discussion about the participants at the site, the setting, who would be interviewed, what would be observed, the process, the evolving nature of events by the participants within the setting, and indicating the type or types of data collection, observation, interviews, documents, audio-visual material. Again, when I say the data collection procedures, we're not doing this. I mean, we're really kind of just reflecting on our question, what the literature said, and taking that information. Okay, we have a research question. We read about this. Maybe we had an opportunity to practice a little bit of something, and then we're reflecting on what happened throughout this process of researching this particular question and getting the answers to your research questions. You're using your literature review and your journal as the reflective process. So I have all of these things, you know, as far as, and then you're using the group and how it's applicable because you've done something on your campus, okay? So an example of that would be, you know, something that I think needs some change, and something that I would have written a reflective procedure on for my district was the student success team process, okay? So many teachers believe that this process is a direct line to special education. And so because of that, too many people are being identified in special education. And the identification of special ed students is a problem within my district, okay? Specifically African American students. So my problem would be, how do we, you know, get the teachers to understand that the SST process is not a direct connect to special ed? So I would have to look up, you know, different articles on special education, the process, over-identification of special education students, specific populations. In my district, we are all Black and brown. So we are mostly Latino and African American, with a small percentage of other students. So clearly that over-identification of it all is happening within our district. And then how we look at the student, what happens in the SST process where teachers think, okay, you're not making the mark, so you must be special ed. And what is special ed? So this would be something that I would talk about. And what is the SST process, and why does it exist? And you know, the subtitles for all of those things. So that would be a reflective process. So I would look at all the data and who has the best SST process, who is not over-identifying, who's not utilizing as it, but who's using the SST process in its proper format, which is to just discuss, put an intervention in place, see if it worked, test it out. If it didn't, why not? Come back, discuss it again, see if another intervention needs to happen, and so on. But it doesn't mean that it's a direct connection to the special education. So when you try these different interventions and they don't work, well, what's stopping it? Why aren't we reflecting on what's happening? Could it be that it's their environment, their trauma? They've moved around, they've done all of these things. So again, the setting is my district. I'm not going to interview anyone, but who's observed. I might take some district data of how many people were tested, and all of them would be Latino and African Americans. I said the majority of them are in our district. So how many of them were tested for special education, and then how many qualified, you know, and what is the percentage of that? And how many came from the SST process, where the team, which are teachers and administrators, decided that this is? And do we have to change our thought process because we're over identifying? Because then the psychologist is there, and the psychologist does the actual testing. Sometimes they're there at the SST process, but a lot of times they're too busy to be there. And so if they're not there, they do the testing, and maybe there is something wrong, and maybe on that end they feel that if they don't qualify the student, what happens? Because we have the legal procedures if they don't, and the child goes on to continue to fail, all right? So somehow, someway, we have to come to the conclusion that maybe we don't need to continuously refer to special, and why are we referring to special education? And that would be something that we were talking. So again, we're talking about the setting, who would be interviewed, or what would be observed. I'm observing through the data collection, how many people go through the SST process to the special education testing, and then how many actually qualify for special education services, and are we over identifying, right? And I may interview, maybe there was a couple of people that I talked to, parents, their feelings during the SST process, that I would kind of notate that they had concerns. What did special education mean? Blah, blah, blah. They didn't want their child to be treated differently. And that would be, a sense of data collection there. Okay, so we talked about qualitative. We talked about, you can interview a group or a focus group, the participant observations, open-ended surveys, and then content analysis. None of this is required for Chapter 3, or for this project. But if you would like to do it, this is what we would like you to use. All right. So what is an interview? It's an open-ended questions that allow the participants to create options for responding. Their voice and experiences and perspectives. Information is transcribed for analysis. And then reflexive questions can be used because we're not getting IRB consent, okay? The observations, it allows you to immerse yourself into the social setting. We don't really have enough time with this. So maybe if you could observe a classroom to get some information about your particular research question, then this would be another opportunity that you would gather qualitative data, but it does require consent and permission. And so sometimes, and that has to be included if you do it. And so again, this is another reason why it's not a requirement for this class, but I do want you to know about it. And then the data analysis is based on the research questions and the research design selected for the study. It's the specific procedures for reducing and coding the data. And for qualitative studies, the procedures to be followed for analysis also needs to be addressed. All right, so here was an example. I kind of went off already into a different example, but research questions. What are the newly hired teachers' perceptions of the orientation process? Now, this one doesn't really have a lot to do with school counseling, but this was just something that you'll see. You're going to report the facts, narrate the story, and put the participants' views in quotes, okay? So this would be, a sampling of interview questions, all right? The limitations, you need to add this to it: the sufficient access to the site for data collection, the observational role, building rapport with the participants, obtaining permission to use the documents, and then the ethical issues, all right? So that is Chapter 3, and that's what you will be working on in the next couple of weeks. So I do want you to go ahead and take a look at that. I want to take us back to Blackboard so that you're able to see where we are. All right, so we're here at Blackboard again, and we are at week 5. Because we had several people that are not able to participate in the week 5 online for many important reasons, I have created this video to assist you with the online lecture that we would be having this evening at 6 p.m. We will be using the this evening's class to work individually with students who have questions about their particular research, and we'll go from there, okay? You are working on this week, the last 8 for your bibliography, and then we have week 6 coming up. And during week 6, you're going to be writing chapter 3, which is another reason why I created this video. And I will put my PowerPoint available for that and give you some more highlighting features in a video that's less time so that you can review that. And then week 7, you will also be putting your data collection tools together. Again, the requirement for this class is just using your journal and your reflective journal and your literature review as the data collection and putting that together. If you would like to use interview, survey, any of that, you may, but it is not a requirement for this project, okay? And then week 8, when we meet back again online, you're going to be proposing your project, and we'll be talking about that. You'll be submitting your final proposal, which is chapters 1 and chapters 3. We still have not, we'll do 2 and 4 in 605. All right? Thank you so much for your time, and I hope this is helpful for you. Thank you.